Welcome everybody. We are in Kraków on App.js conference. Our guest today in our live studio is Nader Dabit from Amazon Web Services. Nader, welcome to Kraków.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay, it's not your first time in Poland, isn't it?
I've been to Wrocław, I've been to Warsaw, but it's my first time in Kraków.
And how is it?
It's very nice so far. The food's been really good. The people have been really nice. So far, so good.
And how about the conference?
The conference is really good. It seems like you've been doing this for years, but apparently it's your first time
doing this. It's the first time.
So
and
yeah,
we do this
you're doing a good job.
And we do this on our own. You know, we don't have an agency for that. So, all right. Nader is going to hold a workshop tomorrow about how to use Amazon Web Services for developing React Native apps. Can you say a few words about that?
Sure. So I work on the team at AWS, and we specialize in mobile development. So React Native, of course, falls into that category. We're doing a lot of stuff for native iOS, native Android, React Native, and we're actually also getting into some web stuff. So we're doing progressive web applications, but just web applications in general. And we have a couple of our main things that we kind of like feature in a lot of the workshops that we're doing. And the things I'm going to be covering are AWS Amplify and AWS Appsync.
I checked the website of Appsync a few minutes ago, and it states that it's a technology for making social media, chats, and dating apps. That was a bit surprising, you know, in this tech world to see a marketing claim like that. Yeah. So let's say that we would like to make a dating app, and using Appsync. How would you approach that? You know?
Well, basically,
in what way Appsync is better than anything else to build another Tinder?
Right. Well, a lot of the applications that people are building today kind of fall into what we categorize as modern applications, modern web, modern mobile applications. And typically, these applications, they inherit all of the features and all of the requirements that a traditional application would require. But now people want things like real time. They want their applications to work in real time. So for instance, if you've been on Facebook and someone makes a comment, or if you're on Twitter and someone likes something, you see the update happen, you know, automatically. You don't have to go and refresh. So Appsync offers real-time capabilities out of the box, also offline capabilities. So if you've ever worked with, if you ever open Twitter and you go offline, you're still able to view your feed. You may not be able to pull up new messages, but you're able to like things, and when you come back online, the application still works. So Appsync offers real-time, it offers offline capabilities, but it also offers something that that is really a GraphQL thing. It's an API gateway, so people can bring all of their different backend, all of their different microservices, all of their different data sources into a single entry point, and then they're able to have a consumable, backend that the front-end developers can use that abstracts away the actual backend implementation, and they're able to use GraphQL to consume all of their different backend resources.
Okay, I understand it's all about saving time, right? So developers can develop apps quicker and focus on doing stuff that's really important. So I'll stick for a while to this dating apps case.
Yeah.
Let's say we are going to write a Tinder killer, and you want to make a proof of concept. How fast is going to happen using the Appsync?
So for something like Tinder, you would need a few different things off the bat, off the top of my head. You would need something like user authentication and user authorization. So when someone uses the application, you need to know who that person is. So you would need authentication. You would also need some type of API. The API would typically consist of two things. It would need some type of URL or some way to actually communicate with that API and send requests and responses back and forth. And then you would need a data source to store the data about the actual application. So with Amplify and Appsync actually combined, you can spin up an authentication service and add an API in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That would actually create all of the backend resources you would need for an application like that. But you would then have to write the client-side code that would interact with that. And how long that would take depends on how good of a developer you are.
Okay, and when it comes to Amplify, what is the difference between Amplify and Appsync? You said that they can work well together, but the barrier is a bit blurred. So
right.
How would you call that?
So Appsync is a managed GraphQL service. It works as a managed database, a managed API. So it's kind of like a lot of people compare it to things like Firebase. So if you've ever worked with something like that, that's kind of what that's where that falls into the category. Whereas Amplify is something that just enables you to create cloud resources from your client-side environment. So a lot of front-end developers are used to working from their terminal. They're used to staying in their front-end environment and working like maybe with their IDE in their terminal. With Amplify, you can create all of these different cloud resources in your AWS account without ever actually having to go into the AWS console. So with Amplify, you would create an Appsync API from Amplify, but you would also be able to create things like authentication. You would create things like analytics services and all of that stuff directly.
So essentially, it's like another abstraction layer over that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not really, we have the Amplify console, which is its own service, and that's the only thing that's actually different than any of the AWS services. So you're basically creating AWS services that have been there directly from your client-side environment.
Okay, and I've noticed that Amplify has some support for VR and AR. What you can achieve with that?
So we have a service called Amazon Sumerian, and it's a kind of like a GUI for creating AR and VR applications. And when you consume one of these applications, a lot of times you need, again, things like the user's identity to get information about that user. So you might want to have the user's user ID to be able to query a data source. So with Amplify, you can actually have the scene embedded. And when the scene loads, you can then use the user's identity to pass that information to Sumerian and then get information about the user so you can actually have a real interactive experience.
Okay, let's go back for a while to your workshop tomorrow. What's going to happen tomorrow?
So we're going to start with a brand new Expo application or a React Native application if you're using the React Native CLI. And we're going to be using Amplify and Appsync, the stuff that we talked about earlier. And we're going to be adding authentication. We're going to be adding a GraphQL API. We're going to be adding user authentication, user authorization against the API. So we're going to be able to have information about the user stored in the data source. So whenever the user starts interacting with the application, we can maybe query the database based on the user's identity. So you can do things like fine-grained access control. So we're going to be implementing that as well. We're going to show how to also remove different services. So after you've created the service, you might want to not use it anymore. So we're going to show how to delete these the resources. And then we're going to show how to work with multiple environments, because when you're working with this type of workflow, sometimes you want to test things out, but you don't want to affect your main environment. We're going to show how to initialize a new environment by cloning your existing environment, testing things out, and then merging whatever changes you'd like back into your development environment.
Sounds awesome. Nader stays with us in Kraków. The conference is ongoing. The next session starts in less than an hour, and it will contain multiple lightning talks. The first one is held by Tom van Gelderen, and it's about automated CI and CD pipelines using Expo and React Native. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nader, for being my guest in the live studio of App.j's conference in Kraków.
Thank you for having me.